Hey Wisecrack, Jared here. Today we're talking about the movie that made Batman v Superman look like an art house masterpiece, Justice League. God, I wish it was that one. Okay, technically Super Friends, but still better than Justice League. Yeah, that's the one. So, full disclosure, Justice League is not good. It's trite AF.
I believe in truth, but I'm also a big fan of justice.
And yeah, if that line didn't tip you off, they also totally botched Superman. Worst of all, the film neutered all the thematic ambitions of its predecessor, throwing the Superman as Christ metaphor into the trash. But beneath all these flaws, there's one central issue that makes Justice League so forgettable. After subjecting ourselves to all 121 minutes of this film over and over again, seriously, I think I've seen it like 5 times, we think the film's main failure comes from its inability to juggle two things: advancing the main conflict with Steppenwolf and introducing us to our new palette of characters. While in a better film, these two aspects would work in concert with each other, in Justice League, it's the complete opposite. Every time we have backstory or character development, it seems to come at the expense of the main story. To understand how this is even possible though, we first need to understand one fundamental lesson in screenwriting: dramatic action. Welcome to this Wisecrack edition on the Justice League. What went wrong? And yeah, if you can spoil a turd, spoilers for Justice League ahead. Also Batman v Superman and Infinity War. But first, a quick recap. Justice League takes place in a world without Superman. After the Man of Steel was killed by Doomsday, Bruce Wayne is racked by guilt. Well, supposedly. But Bruce doesn't have much time to dwell on this because a new world-ending threat is knocking on Earth's door in the form of
Steppenwolf, the end of worlds. He lived only to conquer.
Steppenwolf wants to turn Earth into a hellscape, but to do so, he'll need to reclaim the Mother Boxes, essentially DC's version of the Infinity Stones, which were reactivated by Superman's death. These boxes have been guarded by the ancient tribes of Amazons, Atlanteans, and men for centuries, but now that Steppenwolf is back, Batman has to rally the old alliance and build a crack team to stop him. You got familiar favorites like Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince, along with a Sheldon Cooper-inspired Flash, a Dothraki Aquaman, and a CGI'd Cyborg. So, what is dramatic action? While the term applies to all dramatic writing, playwright David Edgar summed it up best in his book, How Plays Work, by defining it as a project followed by a contradiction. Now I know that sounds like a Russian nesting doll of terms, so let's break it down. By a project, Edgar means more or less a goal, usually stated with a subject, verb, and object. So for example, when Batman tries to bribe an Icelandic village into helping him find Aquaman,
I'll give you $25,000 to talk to this man right now.
we could state the project as Batman looks for Aquaman. Subject, verb, object. Pretty simple, right? But Batman and Aquaman can't be besties right off the bat, otherwise there'd be no conflict and that Rotten Tomatoes score would slide even further. That's where Edgar's idea of the contradiction comes in. Typically, our heroes don't get what they want in a scene. They run into the contradiction, or more simply, obstacles. As it turns out for Bruce, Aquaman doesn't want to play nice with friends.
If fight comes, we'll need you.
Don't count on it, Batman.
Why not?
It's not like you coming here digging into my business, getting into my life.
To Edgar, the best way to express the contradiction is a basic but statement. So if we were to put the project and contradiction together for this scene, we get something like this. Batman looks for Aquaman, but Aquaman is a dick. Now the reason why dramatic action is such a big deal is that it advances conflict. Characters make certain choices in the pursuit of their goals, only for new obstacles to pop up in response to these choices. Because the contradiction always gets in the way of the project, no scene should end on the same note it began. Just look at Batman, who after being scorned by Aquaman wonders if he lost him forever.
So you say you have no way of reconnecting with this Aquaman?
Oh, I put a tracking device in his coat. He left without it.
This is what screenwriting guru Robert McKee means when he says that a scene must turn. In his book Story, McKee writes, if the value-charged condition of the character's life stays unchanged from one end of a scene to the other, nothing meaningful happens. The scene has activity, talking about this, doing that, but nothing changes in value. It is a non-event. It's that last point that's relevant. Without dramatic action, conflict won't advance, and the scene won't turn. And this is where Justice League seriously screws up. While most of the scenes do have dramatic action and do turn, they do so by focusing on our heroes' individual arcs at the expense of the conflict. And even though scenes turn, it's done in a way that's hasty and ungratifying. Let's look at Aquaman again. Following the mother box being stolen from Atlantis, we see him shrug it off. The project of this scene would be Aquaman wants to abandon Atlantis, and that makes sense based on the character we saw earlier, a man whose only allegiance is to himself.
Strong man as strong as alone. You ever heard that?
That's not a saying. That's the opposite of what the saying is.
But then comes the contradiction, and tell me if you see a problem here.
Your mother left you to save your life. Cannot imagine how it hurt her. What it cost her. But you're not a defenseless child now. It would have been her responsibility to follow that monster to the surface and stop it. Now, it's yours.
Yeah, so that character, we have no idea who she is, and that backstory, yeah, never hinted at. So, while sure there is a contradiction, we could express it as, but some rando convinces Aquaman to stay. It feels cheap, like a purely artificial and convenient plot device. Almost as cheap as another poor DCEU turn. Save Martha! A Deus Ex Martha, if you will. As it turns out, this isn't the only time Justice League seems to cheat when it comes to dramatic action in our character scenes.
You smell good.
To prove our point, let's look at one of the most frustrating moments in the movie, the discussion to bring Superman back to life. While we could talk about how the project of this scene, Bruce argues to bring back Superman, defies the logic of its predecessor,
he has the power to wipe out the entire human race, and if we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty.
By concocting some weird pet cemetery debate.
We mean bring him back in like a yay, he's back way, not in like a pet cemetery scenario.
It's actually the contradiction that really gets us. While Bruce advocates for Superman's revival, he encounters his first obstacle in the form of Diana, who's worried about what happens if the plan fails.
You're risking lives. Theirs and maybe countless more.
We don't have time for a control group. Is it a risk? Yes, but it's necessary.
Why? Because of your guilt?
Now, if this had you scratching your head, you're not alone, because nowhere in the preceding hour did the film show a Bruce Wayne tormented by guilt. No flashbacks, no dreams, no coping mechanisms. And if you think we're being unduly harsh, then know that all of these were employed in Batman v Superman to explain Bruce's extreme distrust for the Man of Steel. Just like with Aquaman, the scene has dramatic action, and yes, it turns, but only through artificially inserted conflict. Unsurprisingly, there are some pretty big consequences for making so much of the dramatic action focus on our heroes' very thin personal and interpersonal arcs. In fact, the film is so preoccupied with rushing to set up our characters and their own foibles, like Flash's social awkwardness, Aquaman's lone cop persona, Cyborg's self-hatred, and Diana's isolation from the world, that it seemingly forgets Steppenwolf altogether. Case in point, consider the mother boxes. You know, these.
Carried from planet to planet, the mother boxes combine to form the Unity, an apocalyptic power that not only destroys worlds, but transforms them into the primordial hellscape of Steppenwolf's birth world.
Well, it might surprise you to learn that Batman, arguably the protagonist of the film, only learns of the box's importance at the 30-minute mark. But surely the rest of the film and our heroes are focused on keeping the boxes from Steppenwolf's poorly CGI'd hands, right? Yeah, no. The first box is stolen from the Amazons without any of our heroes present. The second one features a measly 30-second fight scene with Aquaman, and just to rub it in how little our heroes care about the actual plot, the third and final mother box is basically stolen off-screen while our team is recovering from a Superman beatdown.
The mother box. He has the last one.
Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Jared, by assembling the team, the Justice League is stopping Steppenwolf. And while there's definitely some merit to that idea, this shouldn't be an either-or scenario. To prove my point, let's look at another film with a very similar premise, Infinity War. In the film, Thanos is hellbent on destroying half of all life by gathering the Infinity Stones. After Bruce Banner escapes Thanos' grasp in the opening scene, the Hulk enlists the help of Doctor Strange and Tony Stark.
If he gets his hands on all 6 stones, Tony,
You could destroy life on a scale hitherto undreamt of.
Importantly, you'll notice 3 things in this scene. 1, our heroes get together and learn of the initial threat in under 15 minutes. 2, our heroes, specifically Strange and Vision, possess Infinity Stones. That puts them on a crash course with the plot. And most importantly, 3, our heroes' personal problems are intermixed with the conversation to stop Thanos.
Who just saved your magical ass? Me.
I seriously don't know how you fit your head into that helmet.
Admit it. You should have ducked out when I told you to.
If it wasn't already obvious, Stark and Strange aren't exactly fond of each other, and the dramatic action of any given scene is as much about stopping Thanos as it is about learning to work together. But as the two continue to fight alongside each other, their dysfunction goes from Tony reluctantly rescuing Strange
I gotta tell you, he's not really my friend. Saving his life is more of a professional courtesy.
to Strange bartering the Time Stone away to save Tony's life.
Spare his life, and I will give you the stone.
In this last instance, the dramatic action of the scene is equally about plot, stopping Thanos, and character, Tony and Strange's relationship. The project is Thanos wants to kill Tony, and the contradiction is, but Strange stops him by giving away the Time Stone. And to be honest, this moment resonated. Now, we'd be wrong to say that this kind of interplay between our hero's personal conflict and the actual plot is absent in Justice League, but we'd also be wrong to say that it's similar in terms of quality or scale. Let's look at The Flash, for example. While the film makes a point of showing his desperate need for friends,
I need friends.
this conflict doesn't really manifest itself anywhere else in the film, let alone in a confrontation with Steppenwolf. The closest we have to it is this.
It's really cool. You guys seem ready to do battle and stuff, but full transparency, I've never done battle.
Yes, the dramatic action of the sequence could be stated as Flash is scared to enter the fray against Steppenwolf, but Batman convinces him. But we have to ask, at what part of the movie did Flash indicate to us that he had combat stage fright? Ultimately, this scene feels like a tenuous tie-in between Barry's personal struggles and stopping the world-ending threat, and the film treats it as such. After the Flash rescues the hostages, the film conveniently forgets any of his stage fright.
Yes, it was gross.
As a result, these scenes often fail to evoke the hallmark of good writing, Aristotle's idea of catharsis, or the purification or purgation of emotions, primarily through art. Because Justice League fails to properly tether our characters' personal journeys to the action of the plot, we don't feel the proper emotions, anxiety, fear, relief, triumph. None of it washes over us. Sure, we see Diana and Cyborg finally coming out of hiding, we hear Aquaman talk about friendship or regrets or something.
I don't want to die. I'm young. There's that I want to do. I just feel like I never really embraced the sea or the land. I've been a loner my whole life.
But because these aren't developed and tied to the action of the plot, there's no catharsis. We as the audience just can't muster up the energy to care. And we really can't emphasize this enough. This is exactly what Infinity War excels at. Consider the relationship between Tony Stark and Peter Parker, which is developed hand in hand with the main plot. More often than not, our duo finds themselves bickering like father and son in the face of enemies. After all, Tony wants Peter safe.
I know what you're gonna say.
You should not be here.
I was gonna go home.
I don't wanna hear
but
it.
it was such a long way down, and I just thought about shooting.
And now
a
I
leg.
gotta
It
hear
kinda
it.
stuck to the side of the ship, and this suit is ridiculously intuitive, by the way. So if anything, it's kind of your fault that I'm here.
What did you just say?
I take that back.
And this relationship affects the action, like when Tony plays hardball for Peter's life when they're both mistaken for Thanos' henchmen.
Tell me where the girl is, or I swear to you, I'm gonna French fry this little freak.
Let's do it. You shoot my guy and I'll blast him. Let's go.
More importantly, because we see Tony and Peter's dynamic grow and change over the course of the film, we're invested in them, which makes moments like this legitimately cathartic.
Sorry.
In contrast, all the resolution scenes of the Justice League characters feel obligatory and phoned in. It's the difference between feeling genuine emotion in the theater and leaving saying, well, I guess that was a movie. In the end, Justice League stands as a case study of a film that fails to balance two very important things: character and plot, which I suppose makes sense when you consider how they had to establish all these new franchises for movies to come. But what do you guys think? Is dramatic action the best lens to focus this problem, or are there bigger issues lurking in the Justice League?